It's Chris from Retrocession.org. So happy you're here. I want to talk today about how retrocession changed my life. From a very early age, I suffered from pretty severe anxiety. The earliest memories I have of that anxiety were of it manifesting as severe nightmares. Though I don't remember it, sometimes I would get up in the middle of the night, still asleep, dreaming, having a nightmare, and go into my mother's room and I would dig through the carpet next to the bed. She said it was pretty terrifying. But I know what was happening internally. I was constantly worried the world was ending, literally. I was terrified of natural disasters. Terrified something bad was going to happen to my family. Terrified of being kidnapped. Constant fear. It got a little bit better in high school. The nightmares stopped. A rebellious streak came out, which kind of got me out of my shell. But then once I went to college, things got worse again. In fact, they surpassed what I had experienced as a child. Now that the pressure was turned up a little bit, I started to have panic attacks. They first started manifesting as test anxiety, or at least that's what my first therapist called it, test anxiety. But these were full-blown panic attacks. The feeling of being unable to breathe, like a heavy weight was on my chest, unable to think, unable to move. I was frozen in place for half of a 2-hour exam. And then once I unfroze myself, I had to spend the second half of the exam doing everything on the test. I didn't know what anxiety was at the time. I didn't know what panic attacks were. But looking back, for sure, I was suffering from panic attacks. So after undergrad, I went on to work in retail management. And in retail, I think my anxiety manifested more as a workaholism, intensity. I worked so hard. I could outwork 5 people. I looked at that quality in myself with pride, but looking back, I was just coping. Around that time, I started running long distances. I'm talking 10, 15, 20, in one case 30 miles on my own, not a race. I was proud of that too. But you know what was driving it? Anxiety, severe anxiety. Because you see, if I wear myself out either at work or running, there's not any energy left for the anxiety. Then, of course, once I recover from the workout or from the intense day unloading the truck at Walgreens, then the anxiety comes right back. It's often worse than it was before. It's also a great way to get burned out. And once you get burned out, that anxiety is going to come right back. But in the end, the anxiety forced me to quit it all. Same thing in law school, but much worse. In law school, the pressure is far higher than it ever was anywhere else in my life. And it was devastating. I almost quit after my first semester. Probably should have, frankly. But I persisted. Then I started drinking more. I started struggling personally. I didn't like who I was becoming. There were a number of times when a panic attack struck when people were relying on me. I was supposed to be doing some research and present to a group at the American Bar Association. And I just ditched. Didn't even show up for the meeting. Didn't try to justify it. Didn't try to make an excuse. I just disappeared on them. I just couldn't hack it. Somehow I graduated from law school, and a few years later, I opened up a law firm. No experience, going back to me as someone with anxiety, choosing high pressure situations. So I started a law firm, no experience. I did fairly well in the beginning, the first year or two. I think the newness of it, the freshness of the experience of starting a law firm, I thrived under it for a bit. But then after I got used to the situation, after I got used to being an attorney, got used to running the law firm, the anxiety, the panic attacks started creeping back in. And now it's manifesting as procrastination. The anxiety is manifesting in canceling appointments, missing deadlines, forgetting appointments. I was a mess as an attorney. Most of the time, I could hold it together for the clients and referral sources. They usually didn't know what was going on. They probably couldn't tell something was wrong. But I knew, and it was killing me, getting worse and worse with time. The panic attacks increased in frequency until near the end of my law career, I was having panic attacks every single day. Every meeting sent me over the edge. Everything was a crisis for me. And one day, I was lying on the ground next to my bed, depressed, anxious. I was so depressed and anxious, I couldn't even get up off the ground to lay down in my soft bed. I just wanted to lay there on the hard ground. Then I realized I could retire my law license. I could give it up, essentially. And in Ohio, where I was an attorney, once you give it up, you cannot get it back. So I did that. And there was some relief for a very short time. So now, $150,000 plus in law school debt, driving Uber and Lyft, no prospect, unsure what to do, not even sure I wanted to live anymore. And things, believe it or not, got worse. The panic attacks ramped up. Because I had control over my schedule, I would sleep for days on end. I was a mess. But there's one bright spot in all of this. I've been meditating and studying obscure therapeutic methods for probably about 20 years at this point. I've always been experimental with meditation. Meditation didn't take care of the anxiety, at least not in the end. Wouldn't even touch it. Yoga no longer worked by the end. But I still persisted, and I experimented with meditation. I wasn't going to quite give up. Close, not quite. So I eventually discovered something interesting. I eventually found a method for tracing the specific feeling of anxiety I was experiencing in a particular moment back to its origin in my life. Often, it was childhood, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old. And from what I can tell, each of those incidents that started this chain of anxiety would pile on top of each other, making things worse, ramping things up over time. One coping mechanism interfering with another, twisting everything around sideways. But now I could find the origin. Couldn't do anything about it, but I could find the origin. Eventually, I found a way to clear the present effects of that past incident that started the anxiety. I now call it retrocession. Once I discovered that it worked, you couldn't stop me from doing retrocession on myself. Every day, I'd wake up in bed, have that feeling of anxiety, have a feeling of dread, a feeling that I wanted to procrastinate, feeling I didn't want to work. And I would stop, find the origin of it, and I would start to work it out. And this method worked consistently. Everything I found, I could eliminate. Things started to look up. Eventually, the panic attack stopped. The severe episodes of anxiety ended. Little anxiety here and there. A little bit of depression here and there. Until one day, the anxiety was gone. And then later, the depression was gone. And it hasn't returned for years. That's why I'm here talking to you. Retrocession changed my life. And I want to bring it to you. I can't make any guarantees. As much as I would love to, I can't guarantee that retrocession will change your life the same way it did mine. But I've seen it now in dozens of lives. Retrocession works. If you want to learn more, download the free ebook linked above or below. Read it, work through the exercises, and if you're interested, schedule a free 15-minute discovery call with me. I'd love to talk to you and find out whether retrocession will work for you.